to the arena, Sean takes the mound. Small town kid with a heart that's bound. Has a curve, has a fire, but fate's been unkind. Another hit to the outfield, another hill he climbs. In the locker room, the boys laugh and cheer, but Sean feels the weight of all those years. Got the arm, got the grit, but ain't got a break. Just another day in the life of a workhorse estate. He's throwing heat, but luck ain't on his side. Just an unlucky pitcher, but he's still got pride. For the Tampa Bay Rays, he gives it all he's got. A workhorse through and through, no matter the hot spot. From sun up to sundown, he's there on the field with a dream in his pocket and a heart that won't yield. Every game, every loss, another notch in his belt. Sean Armstrong's story is the one that's heartfelt. He watches the stars as they rise and they fall, but he's still standing tall, giving it his all. In the eyes of the fans, he's more than a name. He's the spirit of the game, enduring the same. He's throwing heat, but luck ain't on his side. Just an unlucky pitcher, but he's still got pride. For the Tampa Bay Rays, he gives it all he's got. A workhorse through and through, no matter the hot spot. He's throwing heat, but luck ain't on his side. Just an unlucky pitcher, but he's still got pride. For the Tampa Bay Rays, he gives it all he's got. A workhorse through and through, no matter the hot spot. No matter the hot spot.
And now, you're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
This is your RBLR Rays podcast. I'm your host, Zach Dobb, along with my co-host, Pat. How you doing, Pat?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really well, but I have a pedantic complaint that I need to get off my chest about baseball. Am I okay to do that?
Yeah, I love pedantic complaints.
Okay, so there's 162 games in the season, but the first half is always way more than half the games. What's the deal with that?
It's a good point, because the All-Star break occurs in like 2 weeks from now, and that'll be like, what? How many games will that be?
Like
for the
95
Rays?
or something.
Yeah, that's way longer. Which is funny, because like there's a few other sports that have All-Star games that split the season. That'd be a good question. Maybe we should look into this. How what sport has the highest percentage of their games played before the All-Star break of their sport? Because the NBA splits it up. I think, and does NHL, do they split it up with the All-Star game? I don't know about hockey. No idea.
But the NFL does it like between the
right.
the Super Bowl and the last playoff game, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that they do at the very end of the season. It's funny because I saw a tweet about this the other day, that we missed the era where the All-Star game meant something. And I kind of agree. I kind of also missed the era where the All-Star game meant something, because I think it's what made the MLB All-Star game so unique, was because it actually mattered who won the game. And like, I understand why you don't like, there's arguments on both sides. Like, you don't want players getting hurt in the All-Star game because they're trying to win. But at the same time, it's like, from a product perspective, it like, I'm less likely to actually watch the whole thing as opposed to just watch it whenever the Rays players are playing. Like, I haven't watched a complete All-Star game in years. I'll just watch whenever whoever the Rays send that year is playing. I'm not going to watch the whole thing. Whereas if it mattered who won the game, because that determined World Series seeding, like, I would absolutely watch the whole thing. But as it stands, I'm going to watch, I guess this year, whenever maybe Pete comes in like the 7th inning to pitch an inning, then maybe I'll watch that inning. But like other than that, I'm probably not going to watch much of the All-Star game this year.
Yeah, me neither. I've never been a big All-Star game guy since like you said, it doesn't really matter, and like it's always like a 2-1 or like a 3-2 game where it's just like it's all solo home runs. Like all the scoring happens on, and then they give the MVP to like not necessarily the best performer, but just like the biggest name that had like a hit or a home run. Because I remember in 2021 All-Star game, I think the AL won 2-1, and Vladdy was like 1 for 2 with a solo home run, and then Mike Zunino came in and pinch hit and hit a home run. So he was 1 for 1.
Yeah.
He was 1 for 1 with a solo home run, while Vladdy was 1 for 2 with a solo home run. But they gave the All-Star game MVP to Vladdy, even though technically it was a worse performance if you just like break it down as like, hey. The All-Star game. I mean, maybe it's because we're Rays fans and like we just never get the respect we deserve at the All-Star game.
And my issue with the All-Star game is I think fan voting is terrible. Like let it be like I think it would be fine to let fans vote for like 3 alternates or something. Like you got like it's actually chosen by like coaches, players, whatever for the first like all the starting positions and all that. But like if you want to let the fans vote for like 3 like positions that are not like, you know, they're kind of like up for grabs a little bit, I'd be fine with that. But letting fans determine the starters and really everything else to me is just stupid, because you're just going to get players from the biggest media franchises and the biggest, like, you know, per capita franchises in the All-Star game and not the actual best players. Like Isak's fallen off a little bit, so he's not like the consensus best third baseman in baseball this season. But the fact that he's not even in the top 10 of voting among third basemen in the American League is like bananas. He's like top 4 in every statistical category. So the idea that he's not even in the running to be an all-star from the voting perspective is crazy. And it's just a perfect example of why all-star voting is stupid and they need to change it, because the guys who deserve it are not getting all-star nods. They're just right. Like, period.
Yeah. And yeah, even when we were like, you know, the best team that's ever played baseball in the first half of last season, and we had like a few all-stars, like it felt like we had to scrap and claw just to get those guys in. And then when they did come in, the camera didn't pan to them when they made their entrance. They're the only team that didn't get the camera on them when they made their entrance. So it's just like, and also
and they routinely mispronounce names. Like it's just
my last complaint about the All-Star game is I don't understand why it's the managers from the World Series that get it, when I think it should be the reigning manager of the year winners.
That would make more sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, what do you guys think about the All-Star game? If you're watching along, let us know. You can leave a comment on YouTube. That's the best way to get in touch with us, because we can interact with your comments far more easily if you're watching live on YouTube. But you can also send us a tweet on Twitter/X as well at RBLR Rays, or at our personal accounts, which are listed down below. We want to have this conversation with all of you guys, and we'd really appreciate it if you could drop us a comment, especially on the YouTube page, where it feeds through to us and our producer so we can get it up on screen and address it directly live on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we never have complaints about is our fans. We appreciate you guys so much for joining us every week. And if you're new to the show, this is your first time, thank you for being here. Stick around if you like what you're seeing, and watch on through. We're going to have a great show today. We're going to talk about the last week of baseball. We're going to talk about that 9-game stretch that I've been talking about for 2 weeks. We're going to talk about how that went. We're going to also talk a little bit about the season, the first half of the season that was. We're going to discuss our MVPs for the first half, and of course, as always, we're going to have Bat and Arm for you. So thank you if you're watching us for the first time. If you're returning, do us a favor, drop us a like and subscribe, because subscribing and following is the way that you find out when we're going live, so you can talk to us as we're talking. You can talk back to us. We'd love to hear from you guys, and we appreciate everybody tuning in every single week. So let's take a look back now at the week that was. When we recorded last week, it was slightly before the end of the Pittsburgh series, which ended in a very positive way by winning that series. At that point, we had won 2 series in a row. Pat, what were your thoughts at the end of the Pittsburgh series?
I was thrilled because the way we took that series was we won the Paul Skeens start, which I was terrified of going into. We lost a really close game, a bit of a heartbreaker, really, in game 2 of the series, where we came up really close to tying the game in the 9th. We scored 1 run off Chapman, off Aroldis Chapman, and we had the tying run, I think, in scoring position for that game as well. So we were super, super close to making a game of that right at the end, but we couldn't quite tough it out. But we then took that series finale in a really tough pitching matchup against one of the brightest pitchers in the game. It was a bit of a pitcher's duel, a bit of a low-scoring one, 3-1, but it was excellent performances across the board pitching-wise. From Savali was good, and then Clevenger, Kelly, Adam, Fairbanks just absolutely slammed the door for 4 innings of baseball. And the offense did enough. So I was thrilled, and you were talking about this 9-game stretch, and that put us in really good position for what was probably the hardest part of that 9-game stretch, which was the 3-game set with the Mariners. But that set us up to be in a good position to finish off that 9-game stretch strong.
The interesting thing about this game is that for a while there, I was afraid that game was going to be a microcosm of the entire Rays season. Because if you remember watching that game live, the Rays had chances to score multiple times against Paul Skeens throughout his outing. And Skeens managed to wiggle his way out every single time. So, and he ended up going 7 innings pitched, 1 earned run given up, which is not a recipe for success. And it was really frustrating to watch because there were multiple chances where if you just got one more hit or even 1 more walk that then could lead to a bloop hit or something, you could have knocked him out of the game and forced the Pittsburgh bullpen to get in there. And we could have maybe won it going away. But instead, it looked like through his outings, oh man, we're going to get into the back half of this game. We're on the road. Are we going to get walked off? It felt like a microcosm of the Rays season where they had their chances to win the game, and they just couldn't pull it off. But what was so awesome to watch is that instead of it becoming that, the Rays actually won the game. They got the timely sac fly from Randy, and then Richie Palacios drove in a run to give us a 2-run cushion, and then we slammed the door with the bullpen. So it was really, really fun to watch from that perspective because instead of it just sort of becoming hey, that's the Rays season, they turned the corner almost in the game and got the hits they needed when they needed them to win the game. And so for me, it was a really fun game to watch. Not for all of it. I was really frustrated through the first 7 innings of the game. But when you come and look at it at the end of the game, it is in a way a microcosm of the Rays season differently than I thought, because for the first good portion of it, it was rough. We're not getting the timely hits when we needed them. But then at the end, right into this part of the season we're in now, all of a sudden we're starting to get some of those timely hits when we need them, and we're starting to win games. So I thought it was going to be a microcosm of the first half, and it ended up being a microcosm of what we started to see more recently. So it was a fun game to watch from that perspective, just not for the whole thing.
Yeah. And that original run we got off Skeens was a leadoff home run by Yandy as well.
Yeah.
So it felt like we went for essentially 7 full innings of just trying and failing and trying and failing.
Yes.
I've been trying to, and I've not found it yet, a good place to kind of summarize stats of Rays offense versus starting pitchers versus Rays offense versus relief pitchers. But I bet there is a huge difference in how that is, because the Rays seem to just switch it on in the 7th, 8th, 9th inning against bullpen arms so often this season. So what you really need to see is just us still be in the game come the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, within a run or so. And then all of a sudden the Rays are likely to come back and win. And that's exactly what they did there.
Yeah, and I think that these are the kind of games that the Rays have started to win, and it's moving us in the direction we need to be moving. We're winning these games that are close. We've kind of done that all season long, but now we're continuing to win those types of games, and we're also starting to win a game or two here and there by bigger margins, and that's what's kind of moving us in a positive direction. We're going to talk about it later, but the Rays are on a run of series victories, and we hope that continues. But that's I think it's one of the things that's interesting about it, right, is because you don't have the big 7-game win streak. We haven't had that. But you've been playing 600 baseball for a little while now. And if you can keep doing that, just keep winning series. It may not be fun, like in the sense of like exciting because we're just like mowing down teams, but that's the slowly, game by game, series by series that will eventually result in you getting where you want to go. It's been a slow climb back to above 500. It's been a slow march there, but like we've kind of been fluctuating right around 500 for the last like couple of days, but like that's the march that we have to kind of go on right now because we just haven't gotten that like big streak of games together. But we are keeping that consistently, getting above that 600 win percentage, which is what we really need for the back half of the season. So it's been it's been a little bit frustrating from that perspective because you just like to see like 6 games get rattled off in a row. You'd like to see a sweep, but we just haven't gotten there yet. And I hope to get there, and start pulling off some of those bigger, like a full sweep soon. But that being said, just winning series by series, you'll take that.
Yeah, right. And that Twins series, we won the last 2 games, and then we won the bookends of the Pirates series. And we, like I said, in that second game of the series, we were one big hit away from tying that game and taking it further forward. And if we managed to come back and win that game, which we very almost did against Chapman, that would have been a 7-game win streak. So, like you said, it doesn't feel as satisfying as a 7-game win streak, but winning 6 of 7, you take that every single time.
Yes.
So we just, like you said, got to keep that slow march. If you take it a series at a time, you're going to be in a good position. I think between now and the All-Star break, I don't see where the obvious sweep comes because we got some tough competition between now and the break. But again, keep plugging away, keep it going, and we'll see where we go.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the next series against the Mariners, even though it wasn't a sweep, that was a really, really good series win. And you had it, and like you could have swept them. You didn't end up doing it, but like you won the first 2 games. Like that Mariners series, the beginning of that Mariners series, and really the whole series was a great sign, I think, for the team. Even though it was at home, but winning that series, I think, was a great sign for the team when you talk about moving in the right direction.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we exploded for 11 runs in the middle game of that series, and we got another comfy win, people.
Yes.
Another comfy win. Ring the bell. Ding, 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 ding. A lot of that came against the bullpen, but we also took it to Luis Castillo, who I thought was going to be the toughest matchup of that series, and we got enough done against Wu as well. So to face some really tough pitches and put up runs was excellent. So I'm thrilled to bits that the Mariners are a division leader, and we took 2 out of 3 against them. So love that for us. And, that took us to around 500. We finally got back after a really rough stretch at the beginning of the month. And then, I'm really happy with how that series went. And like we said last week, that this offense are now starting to put together really good ABs and start to consistently put up better run totals.
And I think that when you look for the signs of a team that's moving in the right direction, scoring runs isn't the end all be all because you do have to prevent runs too. So scoring runs isn't the end all be all, but you really like to see a healthy offense. And that's what we started to see. For a long time, we were looking at consistently very low scoring, like just for a long time. And when you look over the last, the stretch of the 9 games that I talked about, we scored 2 runs or fewer only 1 time. And we're scoring 3, 4, 6, 7, 10, 11. Like that's a much better, performance offensively. And that's what we kind of have come to expect from the Rays, where yes, they're going to have their games where they score low, but they're also going to have those high octane games. And getting back to that a little bit and seeing a little bit more of that has been, it's been great to see. And especially against tough competition, like you mentioned, the Mariners are a division leader. We went up against some of their best, really maybe their best 3. And Kirby was really good, and we didn't end up putting up a whole lot against him. But to get the performances we got against Wu, against Castillo, was really, really nice to see. And, I really couldn't have been happier coming out of that series.
No, me neither. Me neither. Just keep it going. Just keep this going. If we can take 2 out of 3 from every opponent we face, then that's it. And like you said last week, this was a playoff series. This is like
Yes.
if they're the 3 seed and we're the 6 seed, which could very well happen at the end of the season. Like that's the pitching matchups you'd be likely to see ish.
Absolutely.
And we took 2 of 3, one of those by a massive margin as well.
Yeah.
Like we exploded against Castillo. So yeah, thrilled. And then we have played host to the Nats. We played 2 games against them. The first one was a 3-1 victory, and then last night didn't go as well. We ended up losing that one 8-1 after a bit of a Sean Armstrong explosion. How are you feeling about this Nats series?
Fine. You know, it is what it is. Like when you look at the game yesterday, we were talking about this before the show. When you look at that game yesterday, you go into that Sean Armstrong inning, and it's a 1-run game. By the point in which you could have brought someone else in, he'd really already given up the 2 runs. By the time, like really, but like the first point where I was like, I would maybe consider bringing somebody else in, he's already given up the 2 runs. And at that point, like, I think that game is, I don't want to say the game's over, but like that's kind of aggressive to say that. But realistically, you had a rough game offensively. Just didn't seem like anybody really had it. Belau had the bomb in the first, or I think it was the second inning. Was it the first or second? It was the first inning. Was it first? Anyway, he had the bomb early in the game, and really since then you had no offense. Just nobody was really. We didn't have a lot of guys on base, not a lot of traffic. Just not a good offensive day. You're gonna have those, and so when you look at a game like that, it's kind of like why like. We've talked about this a little bit before about punting on games. I'm not usually the type of guy to like to do that, but that was one of the first games in a little while where I was like, I'm kind of good if we punt here. I'm not really interested in using our top guys unless we absolutely have to, because we got another game tomorrow, and I'd really like to win this series because the sweep doesn't seem likely. Like at that point, I'm thinking the sweep is not likely. I'm really not interested in wasting guys, and you can really like empty the tank tomorrow. Or today rather, because tomorrow you have an off day before you go on the road. So you kind of have the ability to do that today in today's game. I'd really hate to empty the tank today or yesterday and then be looking at today's game and say, well, I just used all my top guys who, by the way, you used yesterday. So you don't really like, that's just not a good scenario. And as frustrating as it was to watch him give up all those runs, there were some of those balls that were hit hard. They were not all hit hard. It was clearly just like he just was not missing the bats. We were discussing it in the chat during the game. Is he tipping his pitches somehow? Because it just seemed like he couldn't miss a bat. He got to 2 strikes more than once in a count. There was opportunities to get a double play to get out of it. He just couldn't get it. It was just kind of one of those like it was just really rough to watch because he just could not get the outs to get out of the inning. But like it's such a like fluky, like clearly he was getting Babbitt to death. And there was a couple hard hit balls in there for sure. But like, it just was a rough outing. And there was really no point in chasing that game because you got another game today, which is it's a favorable, I would say, enough matchup pitching wise. And you think you have a decent chance of winning this game. And I would rather save my high octane bullpen arms for today than waste them on a game that you are now already down 3 runs. Maybe you come back, but probably not super likely. And it bared out the Rays didn't score another run. So it's kind of like, yeah, it wasn't fun to watch, but at the same time, I don't have any issues with the way that Cash managed it.
Yeah, I don't have issues with the way Cash managed it, but Luke has left a comment in our YouTube page, which is great to join the discussion. And I'd like to highlight this point. He said the 5th and 6th inning has been a disaster for the Rays this year. They're 29th in ERA in the 5th inning and 27th in the 6th. And that has been the Rays' Achilles heel this season, the kind of medium leverage, middle innings relievers. Is that a problem that will fix itself, or is that something that the Rays should prioritize trying to do something different with, do you think, Zach?
That's a great point, Luke. And I think the reason why it's such a good point is because I believe it's something that the Rays are partially fixing right now with Uceda. You saw how great he was yesterday. I think he's going to start taking some of those medium leverage spots. But the reason why it's such a great point is because when we look to the future, we look towards the end of this season, it's a problem the Rays are going to have no problem addressing because some of the guys that are starters right now are going to be filling that middle relief role. It's because you have Springs is starting to move back into his innings building phase where he's starting to build up more towards 3 to 4 innings. And Boz is like pretty much ready. They might give him a few more starts, but eventually you're going to add those two guys back into the rotation. And when you do that, you're going to be moving somebody to the bullpen. And so you're talking about moving maybe you move Bradley back down to AAA for a little bit if you really want to, but you're going to have a surplus of guys that can go multiple innings on your roster that you can now move around. Maybe you trade someone, but I really think what's going to end up happening is someone like Savali, or I don't know, maybe Boz. We'll have to kind of see how things go, but you're going to have high quality arms that are going to be able to kind of sit in that middle relief role. And I think Uceda is really, really good. We talked about him when he was up. He was kind of up for a little bit, then went back down. If you look at the numbers he's been putting up, in the minors, he's been one of the top arms in AAA so far this season. He's really, really good. And you saw it last night. He's really good. I think he can fill that middle relief role. And as tough as it's been to watch Armstrong, like, he's been really good for the Rays in the past. When you look at those middle relief, I think what has inflated those numbers is a bunch of bad outings from Devenski, 1 or 2 rough outings recently from Armstrong, because he also had a rough outing in the Mariners series where he gave up 2 runs. So he's had 2 back-to-back bad outings in middle relief and kind of that section that you're talking about. And you've had kind of poor performances over the last like month and a half or so. I don't know if they've inflated those numbers, but they've definitely made them worse. And I do think you're right to say that middle relief has been a little bit shaky so far this year, but I do think the Rays are going to kind of address it naturally as guys come back up and guys get pushed to the bullpen. And I think Uceda is really good and can help fulfill that role.
Yeah. Uceda, and I think even Emrod down in AAA are both really good options that can kind of take that middle relief role. The Rays clearly see something in Armstrong and Devenski to keep rolling with them, and also they're kind of bound to not parting with them or giving up on them until they see no other option, because neither of them have minor league options. So if you want to get them off the roster, you've got to DFA them. And I think the Rays are coming to a point where they're going to start seeing the games as being like, right, rubber's hitting the road here. We can't afford any experiments on the roster now. So there's going to come a point where that comes to a head, and then they're going to make decisions on Devenski and Armstrong. If they haven't got it together by then I have full faith that they're going to be let go to give a full run to Uceda or to Emrod or to a Boz or someone like that. Or if we pick up some guy as a waiver claim or at the deadline or whatever, I think the road will be cleared. Right now, they're still seeing if there's any hope for Armstrong and Devenski to work it out, because they have had a good history with the Rays, but they will start seeing these games as mattering more as we get closer and closer towards the trade deadline. And that's when they'll make those tough decisions. But I'd also like to make the point that the 5th and 6th inning feels like it should be, in theory, a bit of a rough time for ERA in general, because that's when you're going to start getting time through the order penalty for your starters, as well as the relievers that come in the middle innings as well. So I feel like, I wonder how this 5th and 6th inning relates to team ERA compared to other innings in general. I wonder if it's higher there.
It's a good question. I'm gonna be, as we're talking, I'm gonna be seeing if I can find that. But
okay, but Luke, that was a really good point and a really good set of stats there that I haven't seen before. So thank you for that, and we encourage you all to continue joining the conversation, preferably via YouTube, because it's the easiest way to get to us. All right, so I feel like this would be a good time to talk about my insane drip. I don't know about you, Zach.
It would be, because if you have been looking at the middle of your wardrobe, you've got some really high-end stuff in the back end of your wardrobe, and good for you. We may have some solutions to help with the back end too if you need it. But let's say that you do. And let's say you're pretty happy with what you start with. But let's say you get to the middle of your wardrobe and you're really struggling. You're like, I don't have anything to fulfill this. And what I have been running out there is just not getting the job done. Got an answer for you. It's shop.rblrsports.com. You already know, if you've been here for any length of time, you already know. Shop.rblrsports.com is where you get not only the best Rays gear out there, also the best Bucks, Lightning, and Rowdies gear out there. And this is a great time to get any of that gear, whether you're hyped or not hyped about the Bucks draft, whether you're wondering what the heck the Lightning are doing in free agency, whether you're rocking in with the Rowdies as they're coming off a kind of a tough loss, but are gonna have a high octane game very soon. You want to rep that game. This is the time and place to get some stuff for the Tampa Bay sports teams, the best gear in the market for Tampa Bay sports teams. Shop.rblrsports.com. 10% off everything there with promo code FLAPPY, FLAPPY. Shop.rblrsports.com.
You can look and feel like an all-star as we approach the break. And that's what we all want. We all want to look and feel like an all-star. No matter what's going on. That's what I say.
Absolutely. And as we approach the All-Star break, we also approach trade season. And I believe we had another comment relating to trades. This is also from Luke. If the Rays have a winning record at the break, do you see the Rays making a move to improve? Or the biggest move is they just don't sell?
This is an interesting question, and one that I've been pondering for quite some time. It would be a cop-out, I think, to say it really depends on how these last 2 weeks before the break go, because I feel like right now, I think it's still a little uncertain. If the Rays have a winning record at the break, I think they will make some minor additions at the fringes. Like they could go get a reliever, perhaps. They could maybe go get a lefty bat, maybe. To add a bit more oomph, a bit more power to the lineup, but one that'll be like a rental or one that's kind of not an established name brand. Like I don't see them going out and getting a Nelson Cruz again or an Ohtani or whatever. I don't see any of that happening, but maybe there's a guy that's kind of went under the radar somewhere else that we can pick up for relatively cheap. I could see that happening if we have a winning record. The tough thing with this Rays roster is with Randy improving, Yandy improving, Paredes being as good as he has been, Lau consistently back, Lowe consistently back. The spots where you can make a genuine, massive improvement at are few and far between, I think. So I think it's going to be difficult. I think the most easy comparison to make would be maybe like the 2018 trade deadline, where like we made additions, but they weren't like necessarily to help us compete for that year in particular. We did a bit of buying, we did a little bit of selling. I could see us maybe doing that just because I think in 2025 we'll be really, really good with all our rotation pieces back. I could see us maybe like, getting a player that'll be good for us for not just this year, but also a couple of years down the line, like a Tommy Pham type that we did in 2018, but we might sell some pieces as well. Like maybe we try and get rid of Savali. Maybe we try and sell high on a Jason Adam or a Ahmed Rosario and kind of do both at the same time, if that makes sense. What are your thoughts on it, Zach?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting spot, and I'm kind of glad that I'm not the Rays GM because this is a tough spot. I think you kind of hit it a little bit, Luke, with the back half of your question. Is the biggest move they just don't sell? I think the biggest move is waiting for these guys to get healthy, because who is out there on the trade market right now that is better than Shane Baz and Jeffrey Springs coming back off of injury? I said this at the beginning of the season when we were talking about what the additions that could be made, even to begin the season. And I said at the beginning of the year, the biggest additions that are going to be by anybody at the trade deadline are the Rays pitchers coming back off the IL. And I still believe that. I don't think anyone's going to add better than Shane Baz and Jeffrey Springs coming off the IL. I really, really don't. When you look at it from a hitting perspective, you made a great point, Pat. There's not really an obvious place to improve. The only thing you could do, maybe, and this is tough, is when you look at the DH position, right? The DH has kind of just been an off day spot, like where somebody needs to get off their feet. They're going to put somebody in there, or if they would like a matchup against a pitcher, they're going to use that. They don't have a guy that's like a designated DH. It's really a revolving door of whoever needs it that day, really. They don't have a guy that's the DH. So that's the only position I could see maybe they could, if they wanted to go that route. But they seem to really like having flexibility at the DH position. So the last time they went and got an actual DH was Nelson Cruz. So I don't know that I really expect them to do that. But if they were going to do something, that's kind of what I would see as like the only place you can realistically improve the roster. The only other things you could do are if you trade somebody, you'd have to then get somebody back, right? And even when you look at like guys around the corners of the infield or even the middle infield, anybody you trade out of there, there's a replacement available in the minors that is arguably better than most of what's going to be available on the trade market, unless you go out and get a really marquee type of guy, which again, because there are so many more teams that are in the race now, the number of teams trading marquee guys is just lower because so many teams have the ability to still make the playoffs. So you don't see trade deadlines are kind of less like bombastic than maybe they used to be because there's way fewer teams. Like the White Sox are probably going to get rated. Maybe the A's get rated a little bit. Like maybe they trade Mason Miller. I have no idea. Like maybe they trade Brett Rooker. I don't know. But like other than that, like who's really going to be like sell? Like they've been talking about the Blue Jays selling, but are they really going to punt on their whole like organizational core? Because that's kind of what they'd have to do to make meaningful improvements. So I don't know. It's an odd like era of baseball when we look at the trades and the trade deadline because it's a very different era than we've seen before. I think the Rays, like you said, will just make a minor move at the deadline, maybe a bullpen move, maybe a bench guy. I don't even really think a bench bat, honestly, because I don't think there's a move. I think if there was a move to be made for the offense, it would have to be something really significant because other than that, you're not like, I don't see how anybody at the margins is going to improve the team better than what they already have or what they have in Durham. Like realistically, I don't see what they could do to make that better. They could go get somebody at the margins from a pitching perspective, and they might do that. The only other thing that I could see happening is a move that's kind of a 2018 style where you send somebody out that you like, but you get somebody back that you like that maybe plays a different role. I don't know who that could be. I've been saying for a little while now, the one big surprise type move that I think you could see is, you mentioned it, selling high on Jason Adam, because you're going to have a full bullpen very soon with guys coming back from injury. And you do have, you do have high octane arms, that are going to be potentially looking for a new role when guys get back healthy. Like maybe you could see that happening. And Kevin Kelly's has been really good recently, and maybe he could step into kind of a middle relief, step into a role that maybe Clevenger or Poche would have to leave behind when they stepped into Jason Adams' role if he left the team. So that's kind of all I could see happening. I don't think if they get to the trade deadline, to answer the question directly, if they get to the trade deadline over 500, they're not selling. But I don't think adding is going to be very, very it's not going to be very noticeable, even from if the league was just to when you read those articles that grade the Rays trade deadline, it's going to be like a C because they're not going to do much. So if they get to the trade deadline and they're way below 500, it's maybe a different conversation. But as the season is currently progressing, I think it's just going to be maybe one or two small moves here or some kind of retool that we're not seeing coming.
Yeah, and Luke also makes the excellent point that you got people like Junior and Curtis Mead, Carson Williams, not far away. So yes, it's a balance to play. I guess you could play the game of hey, do we need all of these guys? Would it be better to trade one of these guys to get something big? Rays don't tend to do that. If you want me to give one pie in the sky, it won't make complete sense roster wise, but I think it would be kind of cool if we did it. Luis Robert, he's currently on a nice kind of team friendly extension with the White Sox, but only for the next 2 years before it reaches club options. I don't think the White Sox are going to be competing before he gets to those club option stages. So maybe if you wanted to put together a package for Luis Robert, and then you can play him in center, you could play him at a corner outfield. He's a good defender. He's toolsy. He's got power. That's something that I could be hey, if we had an outfield of Robert, Arozarena, Lowe, and Siri, rotating around, and then the other one DHs or has a day off their feet, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. But again, finding room on the roster for that and what you'd have to give up to acquire Robert would be very, very, very big. So that's the big one. But as we all know, as soon as we try and predict what the Rays will do at the deadline, they will do something completely different. They'll get a guy that nobody had on their radar. They'll go make it the weirdest move. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with the Rays and the trade deadline. I think we'll be a little more clear on what direction they're going to do in the next week or two in that regard.
Yeah. And if we're looking for some guys that are on our radar, we've got a couple guys for you. They're the RBL arm and the RBL lats of the week. So Pat, why don't you start us off? Who is your RBLR bat of the week?
Yeah, we've got different bats of the week this week.
We do.
Mine is a bit of a cheat bat of the week. It's more of a bat of the past 20 games, if that gives it away. He wasn't the best hitter on the team this week, but he set a franchise record that had stood since 2009. So I think that's worth bringing up, and that is Yandy Diaz. He's back. He's so back. The batting champion that we knew and loved from last year seems to be back in business, as Yandy Diaz he's done it. It came to an end last night, unfortunately, but he set the franchise record for longest hitting streak of 20 games, beating Jason Bartlett's of 19 games. And he has been awesome during that stretch. During that stretch, he's hit 3 home runs, drove in 11 RBIs. He struck out only 17%, which is really, really
Crazy.
low. Yeah. He had a 367. What's weird about this is we know Yandy's usually quite disciplined and like good at taking his walks. He only had a 2.2 walk percentage over the span of his hitting streak. So he's been uber aggressive with his swinging.
Yeah.
And that's paid off in big time because he hit 352 over that hit streak. Even though his on base was only like a tick higher.
Right.
So Yandy Diaz, it's good to have you back, buddy. We missed you. And what he does out of the leadoff spot puts pitchers under threat of a base hit immediately. Yep. And I swear he's had like 2 leadoff home runs over that stretch. 2 of his 3 home runs were like leadoff runs.
I feel like you're right. Yeah.
So he's been an immediate threat at the top of the Rays lineup from pitch 1, which is exactly what this team has been missing when Yandy's not been right. But now that he's back, he's so back.
When you look at the game against Pittsburgh where Skeens started, I think it's a great example of that because he immediately put Skeens on the back foot and you weren't able to capitalize it, but you then got more guys on base. So you didn't end up capitalizing, but that's a great example of what Yandy can do. You put a pitcher on the back foot right off the bat, and then you've got great guys behind him who can then capitalize on a guy whose bell's been rung a little bit. Yandy has been so good for so long for this team, and he's kind of back to what we expect. You know, just over the last week, right? You mentioned how his low walk percentage, he didn't walk 1 time this last week, which is hilarious. But despite that, his WRC plus is a 165, and he put up 0.2 F4 over that span. So it's just kind of it's just funny to think about it that way, that he's just not walking at all when we've seen that from him for so long. But it just shows that he is a multifaceted guy, and he's going through a stretch this season where he's decided to be really, really aggressive, and it's obviously working for him. It'll be interesting to see if as we look back over the last 2 months of the season when we get to the end, if maybe he kind of finds a middle ground somewhere between that sort of uber aggression and some maybe a little bit more patience and kind of sells into something in between. I don't know. I'm kind of fine with it right now. It's fun to watch aggressive Yandy. Because he has such good contact skills, he can be uber aggressive because he's going to make contact and make good contact very frequently. So that's been fun to watch. The thing that was kind of preventing him from succeeding earlier in the season was he just wasn't timing up fastballs well. And we saw against Skeens that he figured that out on a 99-mile-per-hour heater. He deposited right back from whence it came. Or I guess it was down the right field line, but whatever. We've seen him get back on the fastball. So that's been super fun to watch. Yandy is a very deserving bat of the week and bat of the last 20 games. Yeah.
Congrats on the franchise record.
Yes. Congratulations. Really cool.
Yeah. And apologies to Jason Bartlett. Well, you'll still be the second longest hit streak in race history.
We'll always remember you, Jason Bartlett. We will.
We will. Who is your bat of the week? Because you got a different guy.
I do have a different guy. It was funny because I thought about doing the same thing with Yandy, but I want to keep highlighting this guy because I feel like we just needs to be said over and over again because he was so aggressively disrespected at the beginning of the season and towards the beginning/middle of the year. He's being so disrespected, and I just need y'all to hear it again. Jose Siri is a top 5, 6, 7 center fielder in all of MLB, and he's a top 5, 6 player on this team. all season long. Over the last week, a 190 WRC plus, a 0.4 F4 put up leads the team that way too. Almost half of an F4 over the last week. Slugging 611. On base percentage 409. He is on a different level of hot right now. And it is so fun to watch. 2 home runs in one game. He is pure electricity, pure entertainment. He is an elite center fielder. He put up, I believe it was 0.4 defensive, which is sometimes harder to put up, especially in center field, because that's such a hard position to play. The one out that Sean Armstrong got yesterday was off of a phenomenal Jose Siri rundown and catch. He is that guy. We need to continue respecting him. If I remember to do it, I'm gonna repost and pin the Jose Siri apology form for any of you watching who may need to take advantage of that and use that. But probably if you're watching this show, you didn't need that form, because you already knew Jose Siri was that guy and has always been that guy.
We do have the smartest fans. It's very true. I've been told. People, but also. He's made an adjustment at the plate, and the adjustment is he started to do a two-handed follow-through with his swing. He started to swing less kind of recklessly. He's taken a bit of bat speed off to have that two-handed follow-through, but he's got more bat control, which means that he's getting to pitches all over the spot. I mean, when he had that multi-home run game, I think the biggest takeaway from that was the difference in pitches that he received to get those 2 home runs. The first one was a breaking ball down and in. I think it was a splitter down and in. And then the next one was a fastball high and outside.
Yeah.
He was covering all parts of the zone with that power. And Jose Siri a month ago would not have been able to do that. He would not have had the bat control to get to both of those pitches and hit them for power. But he's got that now. He's still got swing and miss in his game. Don't get it twisted. But that's just who he is as a player, because he swings so hard that he's going to be like, if Mike Zunino was fast and played the outfield.
Right. He had a 40% K percentage over the last week. That is a, I mean, I don't want to say it's a feature, not a bug, because it is kind of a bug, because you don't want to strike. You don't love striking out that much. However, it is a part of his game. But when the trade-off for that is a 333 ISO over the last week, I think you'll be okay with that. Like, the power is so aggressively there that, like, to me, as much as the swing and miss isn't great, he is the example of why swing and miss can be okay if you are providing the power and obviously the high level defense. And he's been making really solid contact over the last week. So he's kind of putting it all together. Will he play to this level of like red hot all season long? Probably not, but he is capable of this. And over the course of a season, he's going to put up really nice numbers. He's going to be exactly what you want from your center fielder, a little above, maybe even a lot above average offensively. And I'm going to say it, the best defensive center fielder in baseball right now. So Jose Siri is my bat of the week. It's well deserved.
Yeah, we love Jose Siri. I want to give another special shout out to Ben Rotvet.
Yes.
He actually
deserves that as well.
Was really good this week, continuing to hit for power. He hit another home run this week. Like, suddenly he's
power hitter Ben Rortvet, I guess.
And I will say this stat every week until it's not true. At the catcher position, Ben Rotvet still has more F4 than Adley Rutschman.
It's crazy.
We're halfway through the year, and Ben Rotvet more WAR as a catcher as Adley Rutschman. Adley Rutschman technically has more WAR overall because of DH, because of like DH contributions. But at the catcher position, Ben Rotvet has not only a higher WAR, but a higher WRC plus than Adley Rutschman.
We just tell you the facts here, folks.
He remains fourth in the American League at WAR put up from catcher, behind Connor Wong of the Red Sox, who's been amazing. Logan O'Hoppe of the Angels, who's been really good, and Ryan Jeffers of the Twins as well. But he's above Rutschman, he's above Salvi Perez, he's above Jose Trevino of the Yankees, above Cal Raleigh, above Danny Jansen, all those guys.
That's crazy. Love it.
Yeah,
absolutely love it.
We're in agreement of our arm of the week. Who is it?
It is a guy that, for for large portions of this season, we've had some questions about. We've said, can he be the consistent guy that we need him to be? He has a lot of like really high quality stuff, but can he be that consistent guy? And the truth is, he's kind of become that guy. It's Ryan Pepiot. He's been the guy that we've needed him to be for large stretches of this season. Will he have his inconsistencies start to start? Occasionally he will, but more often than not, he has been really good, really consistent. The stuff has been excellent. Had a fantastic start this week. Ryan Pepiot is just becoming such an important part of this Rays rotation. When you look forward into next year and you talk about what the Rays rotation is going to look like, you have to start the conversation with Ryan Pepiot, or he at least has to be in the first or second sentence because of the performances he's had. Another great performance this last week.
Yeah, amazing. If he can continue to be consistent, that's all we're going to need. And then we'll see you when the Cy Young arrives next year.
Yes, we will. He put up, in just one start, 0.3 F4 over this last week. 5 1/3 innings pitched, only the 1 run given up. An excellent start. Obviously, I mean, would you like a little bit more length? Maybe you would, but getting the really, really good quality stuff for that 5 to 6 innings is what we need from him right now. He's still young. The length will come with age, but he's providing that high octane stuff and getting through starts with minimal runs allowed. It's what you want from him right now. And at this point in his career, he provided that last week. Ryan Pepiot is a deserving RBL Arm of the Week.
Absolutely. I mean, if him and Taj continue to put it together at the rapid pace that they're doing, then we're going to have some really interesting discussions when Springs, Rasmussen, and McClanahan come back. Those are good conversations to have though. Oh, 100%. We've got a wealth of amazing arms that we're going to have to make some tough choices on.
Yeah.
Okay. Last thing that I think we should cover before we wrap it up today is we made it through the first half of the season. Where'd the first half go? It's flown by. It's gone. We've done half of this baseball season already. What the heck? We finished the first half 40 and 41. We're 41 and 42 now. We played 2 games over the second half. But we finished the first half 40 and 41. 4th place in the AL East, 4 games out of a playoff spot. If you were to kind of grade or rate out of 10 or something like that, the first half of this Rays season, what would you give it? Be honest.
I would give it a B-, and a B-. And the reason I would give it a B- is because of the injuries that the team has suffered. Because there were guys that were put in positions that they probably should not have been put in, and you got the performances you can expect when you put guys in positions they probably shouldn't be put in. You got less than ideal performances. Tyler Alexander should not have been a long-term starter for the Rays this season. He was. Like that just is what it is. And you got those kinds of performances. He had some really nice performances too, but you also got some really rough performances as well. Some of those guys in the bullpen were put in positions they probably should, like Davinsky probably should not have pitched as many innings as he did. Like, so you got some negative performances, and I'm not going to give him an A or anything. Like, it's really like B-, C+. It's right on the edge there. It's right on the edge there for me. I'm giving them a B- because they've kind of turned it around more recently. If you asked me a week ago, it probably would have been a C to a C+, or maybe even 2 weeks ago. Maybe a week ago, I might have given them a very, very low B-. Now I'm giving them kind of a solid B-, but it is close. And I think they need to continue playing well to get up to get to that B level. But if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have given him a C+, because even though the injuries were there, you were seeing some rough performances from your top end guys that were it was hard to watch. Some of your top guys struggle that much, and they're gonna struggle. It's part of baseball, but you can't pretend they weren't struggling. So that's why I'm giving them a B-. It could easily have been a C+ if the last 9 games that they had played, which I talked about ad nauseum, they went 6-3 through that stretch, exactly what I wanted them to do. So I really am. I'm very, very high on them. It's really changed my outlook even more positively than it was before, because we saw them play well during that stretch. But they did definitely earn the C to C+ for the first half of the year. So I'm bumping them up to a B-, but it's a tenuous B-. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I'm not as generous as you. I'm giving them a flat C. A flat C. They've done enough to pass. Like they're
Yeah.
still in the season's not over. They're still
Yeah.
here. They'll probably be playing meaningful games for the next couple of months, which is what you want to
Yeah.
be doing. But like, we're not in a playoff spot. And I know we've had injuries, but I remember coming into this season going, right, we're going to be in the thick of this division chase with the Yankees and the Orioles. We're not
Yeah.
doing that this year. We're not. We're not. We're going to be fighting for a wild card, 5 or 6 seed probably. And it's even 90 wins, I think we'll feel really good if we get to 90 wins by the end of this year. Like, we'll be feeling really good considering how we started if we get to 90. And I think what I said preseason was this team will sleepwalk to like 94, 95.
Yeah.
So, like, they've done enough to stay in it, but they've underperformed. They've underperformed. I
That's
can't
fair.
say they were. For me, B is good, A is great. I can't say they've been good. I can say they've been fine. They've been fine, but they've
Yeah.
not been good. Which sounds like a bit of a downer, but like, for the past 2 weeks, I'd give them like an A minus. So
Yeah.
it's just like April and May, like, drag the rest of the grade down.
Yeah, I think you make a good point on expectations. I think if I was grading them based on my preseason expectations of the team, I think I'd be right there with you with a C, maybe even a C minus, because you're right about that. If you look at it from an expectations perspective, yeah, I'm there. I'm kind of there with you. I think when I look back over it, I'm kind of trying to grade it based on what actually happened, not on what we expected them to do. And I think based on what actually ended up happening, the B minus makes more sense to me because they've overcome a lot of adversity to get to where they've gotten to right now. Now, has some of that adversity been a little self-inflicted? Some of it has been. And it's not all been injuries. There's been some guys that have been performing poorly. But if you were going to tell most teams, hey, you're going to be without 2 of your top 5 starters, and not even talking about your number 1 guy who's out until next year. 3 of your top 4 guys are going to either be hurt or terrible for the first half of the year. How do you think you're going to do? Most teams would say we're selling at the deadline, and it's not even close. That was a scenario the Rays went through in the first half of the season, and yet and still we're still knocking on the door of a playoff spot after all of that. So that's why I give them the B minus. I completely understand giving the perspective based on what our preseason expectations were. I'm just kind of looking at it based on what actually ended up happening in the season. And preseason expectations aren't invalid, because I had the same preseason expectations that you did. And from that perspective, I am really disappointed. And it is a C to a C minus for me because of what they actually ended up doing. But there is some context around what happened that I didn't expect and that I wasn't ready for. I mean, when the team gets off on the wrong foot, losing Taj and J-Lo to start the season, I think you just went off on such the wrong foot. Bilal was out early. It just really started things off wrong. And I think that the team is still recovering from that, because when you lose your top lefty bats, those right-handed batters are going to just get attacked, which is what ended up happening. And they ended up performing poorly. Now, to be fair, they didn't they could have performed better. So that's why they get the B minus to C plus grade from me. I'm going to stick with B minus, but it could easily have been a C plus if the last 2 weeks went differently.
If Yandy and Randy performed like we would normally expect them to start the year, and Eflin didn't start the year a bit shaky, and Savali started the year badly. Like, these are guys that we were expecting solid performances from, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it.
Yeah.
So it was a mix of our good guys weren't there, but also the guys that we were expecting stuff from did not perform.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You're not wrong about that. It's fair. And the good thing is, at least from looking at it from this perspective now, Eflin's had a good start recently. All those guys offensively are moving in the right direction. So we have hope for the second half to be better than the first. A lot of hope. But I do think it's fair to look back over the first half and say it wasn't really what we were looking for.
Yeah, 100%. The Rays were 49 and 47 at the break in 2018 and finished with 90 wins. And if there was a third wildcard spot then we would be on 6 straight playoff appearances. That's very true. I'm not saying the season's over by any stretch. And I think we could finish with a very similar record when we go into the All-Star break, 49 and 47, and go on a tear. It's so within our grasp to do that.
Yes.
But for me, I've never panicked. I've never
Yeah.
panicked about this team, but I have been underwhelmed.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think anybody who's watched this show all year long, there was never an episode where we were like, the season's over. We may have put it in the title for clickbaity type reasons, but see, we never said that on this show. What we did say, this is not fun to watch. Like, that's like, if we were going to grade this first half of the season as a fun to watch, it'd be like an F. This has not been a fun first half of baseball to watch at all. It was some brutal baseball. Even the games that we win have sometimes been agonizing to watch. Yeah. So if we're gonna rate it on an entertainment scale, it's like an F minus. Terrible, not entertaining brand of baseball at all to watch. But it has been much more fun to watch over the last 2 weeks.
100%. Really quickly, because I know we're running a bit long, so we'll do really quickly. 3 awards, well, 2 awards and 1 not award. Who is your first half MVP?
First half MVP, it's kind of easy for me. It's Isaac Paredes. I don't think it'd be any surprise to anybody. It's funny because when you look at almost every major like statistical, like if you're gonna rank him, the guy right behind him is Ben Rortvedt, which is just bonkers to me to say. But he's second on the team in F4 as a batter. He's second on the team in WRC plus. I don't even know what to say about that. But moving on from that, Isaac Paredes has had a really nice start to the season, 133 WRC plus, 2.2 F4 so far through the season. He should have been in the conversation for an all-star bid. He's not going to end up being that way, and maybe he'll get as an alternate. I don't know. But he had a really, really nice start to the season. He'd be my MVP for the first half.
Completely agree. Leads the team in pretty much every major offensive category. It's got to be him. And I think his defense is kind of underrated as well.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have a Team Cy Young Award winner?
It's tough. It's tough because I think you have 3 guys that are deserving of it. It's your top 3 starters: Eflin, Pepio, and Littell. Littell and Eflin are actually tied with 1.1 F4 at the top. It's really, 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 really tough to say who has been like better. I think Littell has had higher highs. There was points in the season where he was clearly the best starter. Eflin has just kind of consistently moved along, been like fine. I'm gonna give it to Littell because he kind of has come in and met expectations of what we were hoping he could do. He's kind of been that, so I'm gonna give it to him. He's had a couple rough starts recently that have inflated some of those numbers a little bit and dropped his WAR down a little bit. Like he was on a pace to get closer to a 2 F4, kind of hasn't gotten there yet because he's had a couple of unideal starts. But I'm going to say Littell is my first half Cy Young, but I could easily see somebody saying Zach Eflin.
Yeah, I'm actually going to give it to Eflin. Just looking at all the result stats, like, don't get it twisted. Process and results are very different things. You give awards based on what's actually happened, not on like, hey, this could have happened. And he's got a lower ERA. He's got a lower walk rate. A very slightly lower home run rate, higher ground ball rate. His FIP has been better. More innings pitched. It's close, but Eflin kind of edges him in all of those categories. So I'm going to give it to Eflin, but Littell is like, I wouldn't blame anyone for giving it to Littell as well.
Yeah.
And finally, I guess this is a less positive one. Biggest disappointment of the season so far, or most underwhelming?
That's tough because there's a name that like immediately springs to my mind, and I want to look for somebody else to like make an excuse for this person because I don't want to say it because he's maybe the face of the franchise, but it kind of has to be Randy, and he's really turned it around over the last month. He's been phenomenal, but those first few months of the season were just really tough to watch for a long time. The good thing is he really has turned it around a lot of, and the funny thing about it too is like his walk percentage is moving back towards kind of what we would like for him and close to like being in the top of the team. The strikeout percentage is coming down. All of the numbers are kind of slowly moving back to where they need to be. The average is low, but like everything else is kind of moving slowly back to where it needs to be and where it should be for him. And I expect him to, eventually get to where he's back to where, what we expected him to be. But it's hard not to look at him and say, man, if only he had kind of had it to start the season, what might have been.
Yeah, completely agree. But I'm not concerned because he seems to be kind of back now.
Yeah.
So it's a shame because, he was kind of the poster child for the Rays' underwhelming start to the year because he was having such a bad start. But I think while he might not hit the season totals that we'd usually expect just because of the slow start, I think if you like judge him from like mid-May onwards or like late May onwards, you'll go, oh, that was fine.
Yeah. You know what? I changed my mind. You know who the most disappointing player is? It's the guy who's not here because he should be. It's the shortstop who's not here on the team, but should be and should have been the guy who could have helped us through this time. Caballero's been great for Cabby. He could honestly, be up there for and maybe not MVP, but like what's the award for like sixth man award or something?
Yeah,
it's like he's been pretty good. 10th man or whatever. He's been pretty good. But the most disappointing player is the guy who should have been here, should have been anchoring this team, but he's not because he's in jail. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that.
That's true. That's real.
But that's by far my most disappointing player. I'm not even going to say Randy because the truth is there should have been somebody else giving him lineup protection, and he's not.
That's so
the last
true.
I hope that's the last we ever talk about him. But I'm going to say that.
Oh, I'm sure he'll come up again at some point.
Supposedly, there's supposed to be another update mid-July.
Okay.
Let's
end on a positive. Let's end on a positive.
Let's do that.
Who's your pick to like watch to break out for the second half?
I have an easy one that's like that usually is my pick for anything Rays related. It's Brandon Lau. I think he's been playing really well recently. He only played in 2 games over this last week, so I didn't want to give him bat of the week, but he did hit to a 271 WRC plus in the 2 games he did play this last week, which were pinch hit and 1 start. So, he's pretty good. I think he could have a really nice back half of the year. But I mean, it's honestly like it's kind of wide open a little bit. Like, I mean, could Josh Lowe be that guy? Could Yandy kind of come back into his own? I'm going to say Bilal, but there's a lot of guys who are kind of moving in the right direction that could end up having. It could even be Randy. Like, there's a lot of guys that are kind of all moving in the right direction. So there's several potentials, but I'm going to say Bilal. But there's a couple guys that could kind of break out in the second half that are moving in the right direction.
My like dark horse pick, Junior Caminero,
because he's going to get back to being healthy around the All-Star break.
Yeah, so I'm like, maybe he could find his way. Maybe if we move a Rosario at the deadline, that may open up a slot.
The path is there.
Yeah,
the path is there. Okay, I see the vision. I see the vision.
We manifest. So what I want to know is, who are your first half award winners? Who is your MVP of the first half, Cy Young, most overwhelming, most underwhelming, and pick to break out in the second half? You should let us know on Twitter at RBLR Rays or at Depressed Rays for me, or at Real Zach Dab for Zach. And you can let us know on the YouTube comments. We do lurk, we do scroll. We do have a little peek. And you can even let us know on next week's show as well if you catch us live. And you can do that by following and subscribing on all our socials, and you'll get notified whenever we go live and are doing a show. So you can join the conversation and let us know what you think about this weird and wonderful Rays team.
It's been a crazy season so far. We appreciate all of you that have been with us through this crazy start to the year. We're going to have an even crazier back half, hopefully a few more wins than the first half. I think we are going to see more wins than the first half. But, as much as it's been unfun at times to watch, one thing I've always enjoyed is being here every week with you, Pat, and with everybody out there. So thank you, everybody who's out there watching. Drop us that follow if you haven't already, so you know when we go live. Appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for sticking around, and we're gonna keep trucking on through the rest of this race season.
Absolutely. We have the smartest fans. We have the best fans in all of the Rays sphere, and maybe in all of baseball. So We'll see you next week, and Rays up.
Rays up.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.